highly anticipated U.S. presidential election has finally concluded, with Trump emerging as the most powerful president since Roosevelt. Alongside him, there are two major figures. One is tech mogul and the world's richest man, Elon Musk, and the other is J.D. Vance, a rising political star. In mid-July, after narrowly escaping an assassination attempt, Trump, riding high on his surging popularity, announced his choice for vice president, the young Republican politician, J.D. Vance, who represents the new right of the Republican Party. Vance is considered young not only because he's in his 40s, but also because he's a political newcomer. He only entered politics in 2021, previously working as a venture capitalist. His mentor is the famous Silicon Valley mogul, Peter Thiel. In just 2 years, Vance went from political outsider to the youngest vice presidential candidate in U.S. history. He quickly gained control of nearly all the emerging voices in Washington's conservative think tanks, showing just how powerful he is. So even though he's just a running mate, his nomination has triggered anxiety and even panic among various political factions in the U.S. Many have skipped over Trump and seen Vance as the real center of attention in the 2024 election. His rise is seen as the Republican extreme right completing its intellectual armament, representing a more theoretical and strategic form of Trumpism. Now, let's take a look at some of Vance's more prominent political stances. Trump's political agenda can be summed up as America First, which the world has experienced firsthand since 2018. He opposed free trade immigration, imposed tariffs, and pushed for bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. to protect the interests of working-class white Americans. As for Vance, here are 3 key quotes to pay attention to. 1. I don't like China. I don't like how China has stolen so many jobs from America. He said this on CBS in May 2024. This is very much in line with Trump's America First agenda. Vance's words carry weight because he himself comes from a small town, deindustrialized area in the U.S. There are many such towns where 90% of the residents are working class white people who feel left behind, and they're staunch Trump supporters. According to Mega Economics, these people believe that elites in America have shipped manufacturing jobs abroad and let in large numbers of immigrants, further taking away their jobs. They see themselves as victims of free trade too. In 2021, Vance appeared on Fox News and criticized the current U.S. leadership, saying, the country is run by a bunch of childless cat-loving women. He used this phrase to describe the Democratic leadership, accusing them of focusing only on identity politics, being anti-family and anti-child, and not caring about America's future. Around that, he even suggested that children should be allowed to vote through parental proxies. This sparked backlash, particularly from fans of pop star Taylor Swift, who's known for being childless and having cats. Despite the criticism, Vance's views resonate with a segment of Americans who identify with the online far-right or conservative forces. This group strongly opposes pervasive identity politics, especially issues like LGBT rights, minority groups, and so-called wokeness, which they believe are tearing apart American society. Vance argues that resisting these cultural values would benefit the economic and political interests of American workers. 3. The era of serving Wall Street is over. We will serve the workers. The skyrocketing housing prices should be blamed on Wall Street's financial elites. This sounds almost left-wing, doesn't it? But Vance said it at the Republican National Convention in July 2024 after being named as Trump's vice presidential candidate. Where his words reflect a deeper concern about structural issues within the U.S. system. And the second 2 quotes in particular are quite radical. Vance isn't afraid to upset large segments of the electorate and potential donors in order to make a direct statement. Vance's political views reveal a deep sense of anger within American society. What is the source of this anger? It's the frustration with elites who avoid addressing the root causes of social inequality. Today's left-wing and mainstream media focus on issues like feminism, LGBT rights, minority rights, and animal protection, identity politics. But they ignore the real cause of social injustice, the monopolization of resources by financial elites. Who's feeling this anger? It's the working class communities in America's deindustrialized Rust Belt, often referred to as redneck areas. Starting in the 1970s, the U.S. began deindustrializing. Those who couldn't transition into white-collar jobs became the most disillusioned group in America. Their lives have only gotten worse, and their numbers are growing. Almost a third of the U.S. population, but they've been forgotten by mainstream society. So how does Vance capture and voice this anger? It's deeply connected to his background. He's a small town guy who grew up in a decaying industrial area. You may know that in 2016, Vance published a memoir, A Hillbilly Elegy, which tells the story of 2 generations of migration. One part focuses on his grandparents' journey from rural America to the Rust Belt, highlighting the struggles of poor white Americans. The other part tells how Vance himself broke free from that environment and made it to cities like New Haven, Silicon Valley, and Washington, eventually joining the ranks of the elite. The book became a bestseller and was even adapted into a Netflix movie. This was around the same time Trump's surprising election victory turned heads in the U.S. Vance's book was seen as a window into the frustrations of Trump's voter base, and it caught the attention of many elites who had underestimated the size and significance of the working class discontent. At first, Vance was critical of Trump, believing that a billionaire like him could never truly understand the plight of the working class white Americans. But over the years, Vance shifted his position. In 2020, he publicly supported Trump's re-election campaign and apologized for previously criticizing him. He explained that he had focused too much on Trump's style and had ignored his substantial differences in foreign policy, trade, and immigration. Vance eventually aligned himself with Trump, adopting the same stance on issues like free trade, outsourcing, and immigration. He became a powerful voice for the frustrations of blue-collar Americans. The way to calm this anger? The answer lies in Trump's 2024 campaign agenda titled America First: Return to Common Sense. In it, Trump and Vance promised to limit immigration, revive manufacturing, cut taxes for working class Americans, and push back against LGBT influence in youth culture and sports. The Return to Common Sense title reflects the desire to unite working class Americans who yearn for the simpler, more prosperous past and are opposed to the current cultural fragmentation. Looking at these three key points, we can see that Vance isn't just copying Trump. As a younger figure with a stronger connection to the working class base, he has embraced the anger and demands of the internet-driven conservative movement. He wants to turn back the clock on cultural changes and restore a traditional economic order. But this will be a long journey. Vance himself has said that his vision is a multi-decade plan. His goal is to fundamentally reshape the Republican Party's long-term agenda and restructure the U.S. economy, foreign policy, and constitutional order. His brand of Trumpism is based on nationalist conservatism, with a focus on increasing state intervention in the economy, especially against multinational capital and preventing the outflow of capital under the new neoliberal international order. In simple terms, the new right wants the U.S. to pull back globally and prioritize its own interests. Domestically, Vance and his faction believe that defending traditional cultural values will safeguard American society and protect working-class Americans from the exploitation of corporations and government. In a recent development, the Trump-Vance duo won the 2024 election, and as they begin their term in office, their foreign policy is expected to remain unfriendly toward major global powers, especially China, Russia, and even India. However, their approach might be less self-destructive than Trump's first term, and then as they focus more on prioritizing America's working class and less on damaging policies that backfire. That said, there are still two major uncertainties about this vision. One, Vance is backed by a powerful Silicon Valley right wing, represented by his mentor Peter Thiel, in some ways represents the growing influence of tech capital in politics. How will this new tech-driven conservative force reconcile with traditional manufacturing interests? 2. Will Vance eventually take full control of the Republican Party after Trump's term ends, and will the Democratic Party, which many see as on the decline, make a comeback? Time will tell. All of this is still too early for Vance. His future is undoubtedly full of challenges, but whether he can lead the Republican Party into a new era remains to be seen over time. Congratulations to the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance.